intro video was the logo for the Human Perspective, which has orange and purple concentric circles around a photo of Judy Human. This fades into a video with a pink border, with Lidia Soto-Harmon in one frame and Judy Human in another. Lidia is a Latina woman with short brown hair wearing a black blazer and blue scarf. Judy is a white woman with short brown hair wearing a red sweater, red glasses, and a long necklace.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Human Perspective. Today, we're going to have a combination of rolling backwards down my memory lane and going from when I was a Girl Scout or first a Brownie in the 1950s to bringing us up to date with Lidia Soto-Harmon. So welcome to our show, Lidia. Can you give us your current title?
Sure. So my current title is Chief Executive Officer of Girl Scouts Nation's Capital. I run the largest Girl Scout council in the country with over 46,000 girls, and with the amazing adults that support them, it's 76,000 members in the greater Washington area. So we include 25 counties in Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and the District of Columbia.
Now, Girl Scouts are all over the country, right?
That is correct. We are 111 councils in every zip code in the United States. And we have close to 1.2 million girls who participate in Girl Scouting.
Well, I was really fortunate when I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York on East 38th Street to have a church right up the block, although it had steps, that had Brownies and Girl Scouts. And I was even more fortunate that one of the leaders was my neighbor and Mrs. Malem. And my mother and Mrs. Malem were very close friends. And so as I was approaching 7, I presume Mrs. Malem suggested that I join Brownies. And why that was so important for me was, as people can read about in my book, Being Human, I didn't start going to school till I was 9. So I was, at home alone with my mother, with a teacher who came twice a week for a total of 2.5 hours a week. So Brownies was really in some way more important to me than for many of the other young girls, because they were in school. And, this was like an after school activity. I mean, it was an after school activity for me, but actually it was very different because it was every week when I would go to the Brownie meetings, when I would be involved with a lot of other girls my age that were not just on my block. So were you a Girl Scout or a Brownie?
So I was not a Girl Scout. Interestingly enough, I grew up in Latin America, so Girl Scouting was not something that my family, I think, was aware about. But I have lived the Girl Scout experience through my own daughter, who joined at the same time level that you did, Judy, as a Brownie, and went all the way through high school. And I know that you have the Curved Bar, which is the highest award in Girl Scouting at the time that you were in. And my daughter has the Gold Award, which is the highest earned award in Girl Scouting. And actually, we did a proclamation a couple of years back, and we anointed anybody who had earned the Curved Bar, the First Class, the Gold Award. You're all part of the Gold Award family. So you can now claim that you are a Gold Award Girl Scout, which is the current terminology.
As I was going through my closet a couple of years ago, I found my Brownie outfit and my sash for Girl Scouts. So I still have it. I have so many really fond memories.
It's funny you say that. They what we hear a lot is that the two things that women keep well into their later years are their wedding dress and their Brownie uniform. And it sounds like it is true. And part of it is that I think, your sash is really a history of all the things that you earn. You might not remember all those badges that you have on it, but it's the history of all the work that you were doing in Girl Scouting. I think that's why women keep them.
And I do have my wedding dress. So I have them both. So Lidia, you held a position, I believe it was at the White House.
Yes.
And what was that position?
So I was the deputy director of the President's Interagency Council on Women, which was created after Beijing, the Fourth World Conference on Women that was held in Beijing, to do the follow-up, the federal government follow-up to the Beijing conference. And we were moved from the White House to the State Department because, prior to the first female Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, it had been Donna Shalala, who at the time was the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who had chaired the Presidential Council. So after that, it had been Secretary Albright. And so we were housed at the State Department, and we had an important document that we produced for the country. It's called America's Commitment, which had all the federal government agencies work towards completing the 12 areas of the Beijing Platform for Action.
Yeah, and it was such a wonderful opportunity for me to participate both in the event in 1995, as well as the follow-up activities. And at that point, Secretary Albright, well, she was then and until her death, such a really warm, ingratiating, inclusive person. And I remember attending a meeting with her at the State Department, as I was a delegate from the US Department of Education.
Yes.
And how the staff that worked on this, from Sharon Kuntz and others from the State Department and other agencies, how people were really learning more about disability, because disability under the Clinton administration was beginning to be integrated, not just domestically, but also with a number of UN international activities. And again, I know that Girl Scouts had, for example, Andrea Levant on staff, I think for 5 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And one of her purposes was to help advance the inclusion of disabled people into Brownies and Girl Scouts. What changes do you feel have been made, both in your region, but around the country, regarding meaningful inclusion of disabled people in Brownies and Girl Scouts?
So I think, I think of the founder of the Girl Scouts, Juliet Gordon Low, who founded the organization in 1912. And she was a disabled person. She couldn't hear. The legend is that somebody threw rice in her ear and that it got caught, and then that they put some medication or something that made her deaf. And so they say, when you look at old pictures of Juliet Low, that she always has this surprised look in her face. And it's because, when they say, okay, we're going to take the picture, she never knew when that was happening. But she clearly had a disability, and from the very beginning wanted to make sure that the organization that she founded was inclusive of all girls. So I think that the thing we're trying to do in Girl Scouts is to create accessibility, to have it as a given, because the reality is that we want all girls to feel that they're part of it, not that there is something special being done for them, but that they are part of everything that we're doing. So when we did, in 2012, the Girl Scouts celebrated the 100th anniversary of Girl Scouting, and I orchestrated this huge event. And so we had lots of Girl Scouts, both girls, but also leaders who needed accessibility. And I remember, as we were designing the space, I said, I want it to be a VIP section. I don't want it to be, this is where we're putting the wheelchairs. And to the point that one of the stories that I loved from that event is that people that were walking by said, oh, look, that's where the VIPs are sitting. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. So I'm proud of those kinds of experiences. We work very closely with troop leaders so that we can help them figure out, we have a lot of girls who not only have physical disabilities, but, hidden cognitive disabilities. And how do you make sure that we create spaces for those girls to feel part of something that is really about friendship? I love hearing, Judy, what you were sharing about, how Brownies was important to you, because it kind of gave you a friend group, if you will, that maybe since you were homeschooled, you didn't have that on a daily basis. And for me, I think long-term, what I think about is that inclusion is about exposure at the youngest age for all of our young people. If you are exposed at a very young age of people of different races, different backgrounds, different, wheelchair, no wheelchair, whatever the, diabetes, whatever the issue is, if you're exposed at a very young age, then this becomes just part of you learn a competency as you grow up, and you think about that as you grow up. I mean, one of the examples from one of our camps, we have a big Muslim community that participates in Girl Scouts, and this is religious, but the girls during Ramadan need to pray 5 times a day, and it just like warms my heart when we have camps and we create a place where they can go and do their prayers, to see the other girls at camp going, "You're gonna be late, you gotta go pray." And it's like, yeah, so those girls will have a competence just by exposure that you wouldn't get any other place. So that, I think, is one of the things that makes me proud about the Girl Scouts and the work that we're doing on inclusion.
I know that you have a daughter and that your daughter has a hidden disability and that she's also been in the Scouts, obviously.
Yes.
And you're very proud of her. So maybe you could speak a little bit about her and both what she has given and what she has gained from Scouting.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We have a lot of girls that when they, when they earn this Gold Award, which is the highest earned award in Girl Scouting, do a specific project that it has to be meaningful to them, because they're going to spend over 80 hours working on this project. And I have seen more than one girl, if they have a disability or they have something that they're living with, that they use their Gold Award as a way of helping others understand what it means to live with, whether it's an illness or a disability, or like we had one girl who created a scholarship fund for children of incarcerated parents, because that was her experience and she didn't see a lot of scholarships out there. But my daughter, her hidden disability is that she has dyslexia. And she's had it since 2nd grade, and it has been a challenge as she has grown up. And one of the things that she did for her Gold Award is that she created a curriculum around how to stop bullying in elementary school of kids with learning differences. She did it in many elementary schools in her area, but the confidence that she gained being able to talk to adults about, okay, you want to help me? Let me tell you the things that I need for you to help me. That advocacy, self-advocacy is huge, because, you only learn that if you have to share it with others, right? They say you learn the most when you teach. And right. I think that for her, right, it really was that kind of thing. And so I am hugely proud of her Gold Award project, but what she has learned and how she has really become an advocate for herself and for others. It's really a testament to Girl Scouts, and that it provides that safe space for girls to explore.
How would you say your job with the Girl Scouts has changed you?
Oh my goodness. It has changed me in so many ways. It's changed me in terms of humility. You think, well, I'm here to help girls, but I learn from them every day. It has also created an urgency, I think, for how do we create change? How do we, the Girl Scout Promise and Law talks about making the world a better place. And so that commitment to how do we make the world a better place for all young people is something that fires me up. And I know that it is through their voices that we create a better place, because there is nothing, when I think of what girls have done to advocate for legislation to stop puppy mills or dress code, or, environmental cafeteria supplies at their local schools or help the environment. It was a girl who got, a Girl Scout who got Starbucks to change their straws to paper straws because of the impact that it has in the environment. All those voices of young people, if we are able to support them to make this change, I think that's where we need to be focused.
I think, on the issue of straws, there still is debate in the disability community because there are some people who can't use the paper straws as they disintegrate. For me, one of the issues of value with the Brownies and Girl Scouts is this ability for people to come together and to be able to work on issues like the environment. Are there new issues that you have seen that the Scouts have taken on over the last 10, 12 years?
Yeah. So we have focused all of the work that we do into 4 pillars. One is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we also add arts because that is a part of that. So STEM is a big focus. The environment, the outdoors, we call it. We know that there is a huge upside both for mental health and for protecting our planet if we get girls outside. And that's why camping is so important, because we know, there's now research that shows that if a child has not had the opportunity to sleep outdoors by the time they're in 4th grade, they don't select that as a pleasurable activity as adults because they get scared of the spiders. And actually, by 4th grade, parents can still tell their child, you're going to camp. After 4th grade, it's a little bit harder. So the outdoors is hugely important to us. Entrepreneurship is the 3rd pillar. And I understand, Judy, that you were one of the top cookie sellers in your day.
I was always the top cookie seller. And very proud of being the top cookie seller.
And, and sometimes people say, oh, Girl Scout cookies, how is that important? Well, it is hugely important for what it does for a girl to learn the skills, having an elevator speech, being an ethical leader, knowing how to navigate and meet adults, look them in the eye and say, I want you to buy not the 2 boxes you bought last year for me, but 4 boxes, double your order kind of thing. Those skills, those entrepreneurial skills, I think are hugely important. And most business women, they say 80% of all business women in our country were top cookie sellers at one point when they were growing up, which I could not disagree. And then the last one is life skills. And that is, it's everything from, how to organize, how to pack. There's a funny story of this woman who, she says every time she's going on a trip, she remembers the Girl Scouts because she went to sleepaway camp and her mother said, did you go down the list? Do you have everything on the list? And she was, 12 and sassy and said, of course, Mom. And she got to camp and she didn't pack any underwear. So she says, to this day, I'm always like, I have to make sure. It's like, and having underwear when you travel is a very good thing. So there you go. That's a life lesson. But, everything from, mental health issues and things like that, all of what is life skills, how to save, how to plan, how to be a good friend to others. All of that is part of life skills. So I think with those 4 pillars, we really cover what we call the Girl Scout leadership experience. And I think, I will say, because we serve girls, but for any young person, though, if you have competencies in those 4 areas, you're gonna be a well-adjusted, successful person in the terms of having a life that you feel comfortable in your own skin because you have learned those early in life.
How did Girl Scouts fare during the pandemic?
It was hard, but we pivoted. We pivoted almost immediately, Judy. We decided that was the time where we needed to step up and be even more present because we knew that girls were home alone, were, distraught, school systems were closing down. It was just hugely difficult. So what we did is we started we were able to get Zoom licenses for all of our troop leaders. So we had, in the first 4 or 5 months, we had 36,000 troop meetings online. So I think it was hard. I think troop leaders, I mean, I have stories of troop leaders who, you know, hung sheets, white sheets in their backyard and did movie nights for their girls so that they could be together. I went to one troop meeting where a mom had taken paper bags and spread them all over her front lawn so that girls would have a sit-upon, that's like Girl Scout terminology, so that they were socially distanced and wearing their masks, and they still were doing, you know, Girl Scout activities. There was an overwhelming support for first responders, cookies that were delivered to hospitals and fire stations, and you know, just the outpouring of support, you know, and again, it shows what an important part of the fabric of local communities Girl Scouting is, because that's, I think, where girls shined. And as we come out of this, some of those, you know, activities that we did online have continued, which I think in some ways has given an enhancement, if you will, to the, I mean, clearly in person is always better, but, you know, online also means you can do trainings a little bit easier. I did a series on virtual mentors where we did 36 mentors who came and talked to girls online, and a lot of them were middle school girls for whom they don't drive, they can't participate unless their parents take them. So for them, they could get on at 4 o'clock and be part of something. Girls with disabilities could just show up. You know, we just had to pivot and we had to be creative. And thank goodness that we're not doing that 100% now anymore, because it was hard.
Is the Girl Scouts outside of the United States?
Yes, we are part of a world association similar to the United Nations called WAGS, the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. I think the last number I looked at was 158 countries that participate in Girl Scouting or Girl Guiding. As a matter of fact, just last week, I had 22 girl guides from Scotland who came to visit and brought me Scottish shortbread and a beautiful scarf. So it is an international sisterhood, which is another reason why I think Girl Scouting is, you know, is here to stay. After 112 years, we are still strong because it's not just here, it's around the world. And the issues that are being, that girls are facing, as you know, from our work at the State Department, you know, the girls are facing around the world, some of these issues, you know, whether it's human trafficking or child brides or just education, something as simple as having a second grade education for a girl. Child labor is another one that our girls are very interested in supporting. How do they support and learn how they can be advocates to ensure that child labor is not happening around the world?
When you think about the Girl Scouts in the United States, has the racial diversity of the Scouts changed over the last decades?
Yes, I mean, we in our council, so I'm very proud because we were the first council to have an African-American president of our board of directors before even the national organization did in 1972, Ethel B. Harvey. The story of the Girl Scouts in the greater Washington area is that there was DC, Montgomery, Alexandria, there's there were 5 councils. And in 1963, we merged as one council. And at the time, the president of our board of directors, Bobby Lurch, who, amazing Girl Scout, she died at 104, and she actually met Juliet Gordon Low in the 1920s, and she would tell me stories about, like, if I knew that meeting the founder of the Girl Scouts was going to be so interesting and important, I would have paid a little bit more attention. But Bobby Lurch tells the story of 1963. Think of time period where that was. We integrated all of our sleepaway camps. And back then, it's not like you can send an email out to tell people that this was happening. So she tells the story that she and the treasurer of the council went out to the sleepaway camps, and as parents brought their children, Black or white, they would say, this camp is integrated. So if you have a problem with that, we can write you a check right now and give you your money back, but this is what's going on. she says very proudly that nobody wanted their money back. Everybody stayed. And since then, we have continued to really look at, racial and ethnic diversity as a hallmark of what we do and everything we do. As a matter of fact, we are now celebrating Juneteenth, not only as a federal holiday, but here at the Girl Scouts. And we had a young Girl Scout from Loudoun County, her name is Belém, who, when she was 8 years old, 3 years ago, she realized that in her school, crayons only came in peach. Skin color was only the peach color. So she thought this was wrong because she's an African-American girl. So she created a project called More Than Peach. And she has now created a set of crayons for all the different skin colors that she could think of. And Target is going to start carrying them next week, which we're super excited. And she's written a children's book, and it's all about, celebrating, the vibrancy of what Girl Scouts are. And what I love about that story, and again, this kind of hooks back to what we were talking about, the Gold Award, is like, she saw an issue and she didn't say, well, that's just not fair. She said, well, let me do something about it. And, I give a lot of credit to her mom and to her troop for supporting her. But what she has been able to do to bring that awareness that, no, it's not about not seeing color. It's about celebrating the diversity of all the colors that we are. It's just, those are the stories that make my heart burst.
I've been talking recently to some other organizations that are doing work with seniors in high school, college students, for example, to talk about the importance, in this case, of young disabled women to be able to come together. Because as we've been discussing in part, disabled girls and women are still not integral parts of discussions that are going on for young girls and women. And additionally, I think many younger disabled people are not meeting other disabled people because in the past, you might meet people in a segregated class only for disabled children. And as they are being more and more discouraged, disabled girls and boys, obviously, but I'm talking right now about girls and young women, are not only dealing with having a disability when they don't necessarily meet other people like themselves, but dealing with the issue of being a young girl or young women. And as you were mentioning, and data is showing that one of the adverse impacts of COVID has been that a substantial number of women have fallen through the cracks for various reasons. So I think the Girl Scouts and Brownies, both domestically and globally, really are more important than ever to be able to help people address these issues. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh my goodness, I could not agree with you more, Judy. What COVID has done for, people with disabilities, people of color, domestic violence, accessibility. I mean, as I was telling you the story of the middle school girls being able to join online, not everybody has high-speed internet,
Right.
And having the awareness, for example, even for me to know that, sometimes people are not turning their camera on because if they turn their camera on, it slows down their speed and then they can't participate. So high-speed internet is not available everywhere. And, depending on where you live and what resources you have, having a laptop to be able to communicate with others is not always a given, right?
Right.
So I absolutely think that COVID has had a very negative impact for communities that need, I guess we all need that in-person connection, but we also know that there are some communities for whom, I think of, girls and staff that I've had who need to have somebody come and help them get ready to come to work.
I mean, the whole issue of personal assistance, because I use a lot of personal assistance.
Yeah.
And the
no.
last couple of years have been hard. We're coming to an end, and this won't be an end for us, but I think it was a great way for us to reconnect to do this program. But I have one question that I try to ask all of our guests as we're ending, and that is, what is something about you that most people don't know about you?
What is something about me that people don't know? Okay, I've never said this publicly, but I'll say it today. I love Elvis. I just found out that there's a new movie. This is how out of it I am. Somebody said to me, there's a new Elvis biopic. I'm like, oh. So I grew up watching, I think I must have been a kid. I can't remember when Elvis died. It must have been like 78 or something like that, around then. But it was called $1 Million Movie. It was in the afternoons, and they basically I don't know, for a month.
Oh, I remember $1 million,
because I was in New Jersey, you were in New York. So $1 Million Movie. So they showed every Elvis movie, as soon as when I was getting home from school. So I watched Elvis. So to me, it's connected, like all the silly songs and all. It's connected to being a kid. So I can't believe I'm admitting this, Judy, but I'm an Elvis fan. I actually, when I leave the office sometimes at night, I say, Elvis is leaving the building.
Well, I think that's a great ending and a different ending. And so for the audience, I have a couple of thoughts. One is, if you have a daughter or a granddaughter or a younger girl that who's like 7 to 14, 15
Well,
years
actually,
old.
kindergarten. We start in kindergarten now. They're called
sorry.
daisies, the little ones. So yes,
So
daisies
5.
to ambassadors. Yes.
We'll put online how you can learn more about the Girl Scouts.
That'd be awesome.
But really look at doing as much as you can to help young girls and young women become a part of this. Also, if you haven't bought Girl Scout cookies, and you may have gotten out of it during COVID, begin to look for and ask for where those Girl Scout cookies are, buy them. And if you don't want to get the calories, just give a donation.
Exactly, because that's how they send all those cookies to first responders and also service members serving our country overseas. We do a lot of cookies to our soldiers. So that is another beautiful thing.
And the final point is, some of you who don't know who Elvis is or who were Elvis fans, now go ahead, find the music, watch the movie, and thank you, Lidia, so much. It's a great
Judy,
opportunity.
Thank you for this opportunity. And I want to, if I may, I just wanted to say, it's such an honor for me to be with you. I'm so excited when we went to that Georgetown event to reconnect with you. And you are one of my heroes. What you have done for women, especially for women with disabilities in your whole career, going back to when you were in New York and, fighting to make sure that you could teach that, it is a real honor and privilege to have an opportunity to have this conversation with you. So thank you for your leadership. All these
Thank you, everybody.
History won't forget us or try to minimize our pain, and so I